Can someone tell me that? Why is he a Muslim? Okay, now it gets worse. You remember the law of Moses said, there are certain water creatures you cannot eat, right? Certain water creatures you cannot eat. Guess what Muhammad said? Muhammad said, all water creatures are game and you can eat them. All water creatures are game and you can eat them. Here are the verses. And this is all in my article, by the way. Surah 596. Lawful to you is all water game and what the sea brings forth. Did you catch it? Muhammad says all water creatures are lawful to you, contradicting the law of Moses. Right? Do you see how Muhammad's instruction contradicts the law of Moses? Here's another verse, Surah 16:14. Surah 16 verse 14. It is he who has made the sea subject, that you might eat thereof flesh that is fresh and tender, that you may extract therefrom ornaments to wear. Notice, according to the Quran, all water game, all sea creatures are lawful for people to eat. But the law of Moses says no. There are certain water creatures you cannot eat. Therefore, according to Yusuf Estes, Jesus commanded everyone to obey the laws of Moses. And he's trying to prove that Muslims are closer to Jesus because they do what Jesus says. However, how can Yusuf Estes say that when his own prophet ate camel meat and allowed Muslims to eat camel meat? His own prophet ate all types of sea creatures and allowed Muslims to eat all water creatures, when the law of Moses says you cannot eat camel meat and you cannot eat everything in the sea. According to Yusuf Estes, doesn't Muhammad stand condemned? According to Yusuf Estes, doesn't Muhammad stand condemned? So then why is he still a Muslim? In other words, Muhammad fails the Jesus test. Muhammad fails the test of Yusuf Estes. Do you see that? Now let me give you some hadiths. This comes from the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Malik's Muwatta. Muwatta, okay? Book 2, number 2.3.12. Number 2.3.12. That's how they numbered it. What does it say? Well, let me quote it for you, the last part. Watch here. This is all in my article, by the way. Watch here. What did Muhammad say? The Messenger of Allah replied, its water is pure and its dead creatures are halal. All the sea creatures are halal, permissible because its water is pure. Do you see that? Now let me give you another one from Malik's Muwatta. This too comes from Malik's Muwatta. Here's the link where you can read it. Malik's Muwatta. Please guys, save this. This is all in my article that I gave you the link to. Book number 25, number 25.3.9. Book 25, number 25.3.9. Let me quote all of it. Watch here. I think I can get all of it. Hopefully. I got some more juicy stuff. Okay. Yahya related to me from Malik, from Nafi, that Abdurrahman ibn Abi Huraira asked Abdullah ibn Umar about eating what was cast up by the sea, and he forbade him to eat it, stopped him from eating it. Then Abdullah turned and asked for a Quran and read. Notice he's going to quote the Quran to show that you can eat it. The game of the sea and its flesh are halal for you, permissible. Nafi added, Abdullah ibn Umar sent me to Abdurrahman ibn Abi Huraira to say that there was no harm in eating it. Did you catch it? The Quran and the sound hadith say Muslims are permitted to eat all sea creatures, contradicting the law of Moses, which says not all sea creatures are permissible. Guys, please put a 1 if you see how this condemns Muhammad, showing that Muhammad doesn't pass the Jesus test. Final example, folks. Blue penny. There are a lot more, but this is the final one. Blue penny. Post for me, if you don't mind, Deuteronomy 24 verses 1 of 4. Deuteronomy 24 verses 1 of 4. Deuteronomy 24 verses 1 to 4. Now this is a good one. Here's what the law of Moses says. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes, because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand, and sends her out from his house. Now notice this. She leaves his house and goes and becomes another man's wife. She marries someone else. If the latter husband turns against her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand, and seeks her out of his house, sends her out of his house, or if the latter husband dies who took her to be his wife, then the previous husband, the former husband who sent her away, is not allowed to take her again to be his wife, since she has been defiled. For shall not bring the sin on the land which Yahweh your God gives you as an inheritance. Do you see what Yahweh says? Deuteronomy 24 verses 1 to 4. Yahweh says that if I marry someone and I divorce her, she remarries, and that man divorces her or dies, I cannot then remarry her. Exactly, Pats. You with me? I cannot then remarry her, right? According to the law of Yahweh revealed to Moses, I cannot remarry my divorcee if I've divorced her and she went ahead and got remarried. If she got remarried and her husband divorced her or died, I cannot remarry her. Jeremiah 3 verses 1 to 2 says, this is the practice of the Arabs long before Muhammad, a practice that's an abomination to Yahweh. Jeremiah 3 verses 1 to 2, Blue Penny. Jeremiah 3 verses 1 to 2. Watch this, what God says. This is an abomination. God says, if a husband divorces his wife and she goes from him and belongs to another man, will he still return to her? Will not that land be completely polluted? But you are a harlot with many lovers, yet you turn to me, declares Yahweh. Lift up your eyes to the bare heights and see. Where have you not been violated? By the roads you have sat for them like an Arab in the desert, and you have polluted the land with your harlotry and your wickedness. Notice what God says. If a man takes back his wife whom he is divorced after she's remarried, that is defiling. That is a pollution. That is an abomination, right? Is that clear? According to Yahweh, a man who divorces his wife cannot take back his wife if she goes and gets remarried. Yep. However, guess what Muhammad said? Muhammad said a man who wants to take back his wife whom he has divorced cannot do so until his wife marries someone else and her husband sleeps with her and then divorces her. Surah 2, 230. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 230. Notice what Muhammad says, contradicting the law of Moses and causing an abomination and a pollution among Muslims. Surah 2, verse 230. Watch this, Lily. So, if a husband divorces his wife irrevocably, he cannot, after that, remarry her until after she has married another husband and he has divorced her. In that case, there is no blame on either of them if they reunite, provided they feel that they can keep the limits ordained by Allah. Such are the limits ordained by Allah, which He makes plain to those who understand. Do you see what Muhammad did? Does everyone see what Muhammad did? Right? Does everyone see Muhammad made lawful what Moses says is an abomination? Moses said, if a man divorces his wife, and his wife remarries someone else, and her husband divorces her or dies, then her former husband cannot take her back. That would be an abomination. Do you see what Muhammad said? Muhammad said, if a man divorces his wife, he cannot remarry her until she marries someone else, and that someone else divorces her. Now, can I ask you a question? According to Yusuf Estes, does Muhammad pass the Jesus test? Does Muhammad pass the Jesus test? Yes or no? Therefore, according to Yusuf Estes, does Muhammad stand condemned by the teachings of Christ because he contradicts the teachings of Christ? Does Muhammad stand condemned by the very teachings of Jesus Christ, according to Yusuf Estes. Okay, now if that's the case, folks, if that's the case, then how is it that Yusuf Estes can quote these Bible verses to prove Muslims are closer to Jesus, more so than Christians, when the same verses he quotes, the same verses from Jesus, where Jesus confirms the law, condemns Muhammad and the Quran? So what have we seen thus far? What have we seen thus far? What we've seen thus far is that the teachings of Christ in their context not only condemns Islam, not only exposes Yusuf Estes, the teachings of Christ condemn Muhammad as a false prophet, and if Yusuf Estes were consistent, then he would have to come to the conclusion Muhammad is a false prophet for failing the Jesus test, or accepting the fact that Jesus and the Father are the God of Muhammad, because both the Father and Jesus' Son would be Allah, the God who sent Muhammad, who's supposed to be the Paraclete. Who's supposed to be the Paraclete. Is that clear? Is that clear so far? Folks, let me give you one hadith to finish this. Not only did Muhammad say in chapter 2 verse 230, not only did Muhammad say in chapter 2 verse 230 that a man who divorces his wife cannot remarry her until she marries another and is divorced by that other. Here, this link, save it, Malik's Muwatta, Imam Malik's Muwatta, book 28, number 28.7.17. Let me read to you what Muhammad said. Not only can he not remarry his divorcee until she is married again and divorced, but the other husband has to sleep with her. In other words, not only must she remarry, but her husband must actually sleep with her and then divorce her. Then she becomes lawful for her former husband. Here's the hadith. Let me break it down in two parts. Sorry, let me break this down in two parts because it's long. Okay? I'm glad this is being recorded. Hold on, guys. No text, please, because I got to get all this in. Hold on. Now watch what he says. Don't forget, this is Malik's Muwatta. Let me read it. Yahya related to me from Malik, from Al-Miswar ibn Rifah al-Quraydi, from Az-Zubair ibn Abdurrahman ibn Az-Zubair, that Rifah ibn Simwal divorced his wife Tamima bint Wahab, right, in the time of the Messenger of Allah. Then she married Abdurrahman ibn Az-Zubair, and he turned from her and could not consummate the marriage. He could not sleep with her, right? He could not sleep with her again. And it was mentioned to the Messenger of Allah, and he forbade him to marry her. Muhammad said, she is not lawful, halal for you, until she has tasted the sweetness of intercourse. Did you get it? Abdurrahman ibn Zubair turned from her and could not consummate the marriage, so he parted from her, divorced her. Rifah, her former husband, wanted to marry her again. What did Muhammad say? You cannot marry her again until the other gentleman has tasted the sweetness of intercourse with her. You guys catch it? Do you see what he said? Rifah could not take back his wife until his wife's second husband, Ibn Az-Zubair, slept with her and then divorced her. Abdurrahman ibn Az-Zubair married her but couldn't sleep with her and then divorced her. So Rifah wanted to take her back. Muhammad said, sorry, she has to go back to Abdurrahman ibn Az-Zubair and sleep with him, because Az-Zubair must taste the sweetness of sex from her. Must taste the sweetness of her sex. After he does that and divorce her, then Rifah, you can take her back. Does everyone see how Muhammad contradicts the law of Moses, what Jesus said you must follow, according to Yusuf Estes, thereby coming under the condemnation of Jesus Christ? So according to Yusuf Estes, Jesus condemns Muhammad.